Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thank you for tuning in, as always. Thank you for everyone who came out to the show at the Sidewalk Cafe last week. Had a really great time, and I appreciate you being there. That show ended up being, I think, what will be a warm-up for the EP recording. I maybe it was a little bit too ambitious, so I'm a little bit more prepared for the next time I do a storytelling show. On the podcast today, we have comedian, actor Gianmarco Soresi, who I've known for probably around a year or so. I met him at the People's Improv Theater, and I had never heard of him before, so I had assumed he was new to New York or new to stand-up. And he was doing these cool shows, and he's done a bunch of commercials, and we had a really great chat. We talk about stand-up, and we talk about like being an up-and-coming actor and some more of the practical aspects of doing that. So, what we're going to talk, but really, what was amazing about the conversation is we took a real turn when we started talking about like parents and like and dad relationships and things of that nature. If you have listened to the show at all, or if you've seen me do my one-man show, you know my relationship with my dad is not great, and it's complicated for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to discuss for the sake of repeating myself. And also, if you want to come to my show, I do it in a lot more detail there. But it ended up being a really great conversation that we got into, and I didn't know that was going to happen. So it was really kind of great to connect with him on that some of that stuff. And it's hard stuff, but we ended up having a nice long chat about it. So I'm going to get right into it now, and I'll talk with you guys afterwards. So let's get to my chat with Gianmarco Soresi, and I'll talk to you guys afterwards.
Were you a fan? Did you go there a lot?
I went there a couple of times. John Bellancini ran a really great show there that I did several
Beautiful
times.
Space, incredible space.
It's a great bar, and like they had some good drink specials. Their food was pretty good.
Yeah.
And it had that nice little back room, which is like what you want in a good Brooklyn
and it was a
comedy
cool,
club.
It was a cool back room.
Yeah, it was a cool back room. It was like what you want for that like DIY independent show kind of feel.
Yeah, but weren't they bad management, double booking? I heard lots of like, yep, they booked 10 shows at the same slot.
I'd heard rumors of that. I'm starting to think that that might just be the only practically sustainable business model, is so that you can literally count your, like Sidewalk Cafe, similar. They book hourly.
Really?
Yeah. So you literally have like, you could have like 8 o'clock, and then you got it. And then you have that, and then you're out by 8:50. Which, now that I think about it, I guess every venue does that. But
yeah, some are looser than others. I don't know, man. These venues are tough.
Yeah, it's such a mystery to me. Like what causes certain shows to take off in New York City specifically.
Sure.
Like your show at the Pit on Sundays, which I've done, is a really great and fun show, and people are there. And
sometimes it's tough, man. I mean, like I could complain all day. I mean, like,
because you're doing weeklies.
Yeah, we're doing weeklies, which is crazy. But like, it's $8. I wish it was free.
Uh-huh.
I think that's kind of my thing. Like, I wish free or like a one item minimum or something. But $8 is just tough for me. My fantasy is like create a room that comedians can come by, hang out, that like some big with like Gary Goldman, someone I reached out to on Facebook, and he's like, he wrote back, I can't really like lock in a date, but if it's open, I can swing by sometime. And it's like, the dream is create a show where Gary Goldman goes like, oh, I'm going to go run that thing. Jim texts me, and I'm like, yeah, come on over, Gary. Swing on by and do 5. Just like a really friendly room
Uh-huh.
But it's tough. Like Whiplash left UCB now. It's at Union Hall. That was free.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's
oh,
at
I
Union
didn't
Hall.
know that.
That's what I was told.
Oh, wow.
'Cause I think just that everything's different with the new space. Everyone adjusts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I haven't been to the new space that's over, like, not in the theater district, but like adjacent to the theater district. It's like on 42nd, like the
And 11th,
8th,
pretty much.
That's pretty far over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just different. It's this big. It used to be a theater, so it's just like a very different thing than
Yeah.
Chelsea. I mean, I only did a couple shows at Chelsea, but like when that place was packed, it was just like being hugged by laughter.
Yeah, I remember going to school night, and I think I saw the Daily Show writers do improv with with Jason Jones. That was really fun. Yeah, there's that sort of like crackling energy that for me, because like the basis of my artistic career path starts in punk rock. I think of like all these cool shows that I heard about, that like, Green Day at 924 Gilman, way back in the day, or like early shows at CBGB's, which is now a John Varvatos store.
Great. You see, my problem with UCB, the first show I ever did there, I like signed up for one of their open mics. They called it like school night or something. One of these mics you have to sign up for a half a year in advance to get on the list.
Right.
But it was first moved here. I put it in my calendar a month early.
Yeah.
So I think I showed up to Whiplash and went in the backstage area and was like, oh, no, I'm on the lineup. No, I'm on the lineup for sure. And like, who the fuck are you? And the humiliation I felt, I think, like, kept me away from stand-up for years. It was so bad.
I would rather bomb 1,000 I would rather bomb for 45 minutes straight, 30 nights in a row.
And I'm sure I was insistent. I was like, no,
I
no, I'm sure I'm on the list. And they're like, who the fuck is this kid insisting he's on the list for Whiplash?
Right,
because
they probably think that like you're not, and you're trying to do something you read in some like self-empowerment book. Where you just like visualize it, and then people just believe you, like you're just trying to like Donald Trump your way on.
And if it was like Crashing, it would have been like, yeah, we did have a last minute opening. You want to try it? And then like I kill, and my career starts because of that. But in real life, no. They didn't like let me off easy. They just like looked at me like I was the stupidest person in the entire world.
Yeah.
I still don't know who they are. I had to forget.
So I'm curious, since you bring up Crashing, does everyone in your life talk to you about that show also that isn't a comedian?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I think my sisters watch Crashing. Definitely that more than I'm Dying up here.
Yeah, that's a different era. That's like if you mythologize like the Comedy Store in L.A. and the 70s, like Mitzi Shore, like that whole scene, which I love hearing about. Like whenever Marin or somebody has someone on from the Comedy Store, like way back in the day, I love hearing that kind of stuff.
I mean, it was strange. What's strange is you read that book, and Mitzi Shore is kind of the antagonist of that book to a certain extent. And then, like, I mean, it was just about getting money, and then kind of this person died during this strike because she refused them from the club, and then we kind of skipped to a place.
They killed themselves. I think they jumped off a hotel.
Yeah, and oh, sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. I won one of my older episodes. Do you know Momo Bouget?
Yeah.
So I had him on a couple of I had him on last year, and I think I had a Thai food order come.
Oh, that's funny.
But I was like, that's why I love doing podcasts, because there's a certain informal nature to it.
Yeah.
That I think is more fun than the kind of interviews that you see on the news, especially nowadays, where people are just like getting angry at each other over.
For sure. I listened
someone
to
who's not there.
Allison's episode.
Allison.
Oh God, I'm blanking right now. Who's over at QED, helps run the Cinderblock Festival.
Corey? Oh, yeah, Allison Klemp. Yes.
Allison Klemp, of course.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
It's so creepy because I'm like, I kind of know Allison. Let's get to know her more from the side.
Oh yeah.
Just like
I think about that the same time, because any other circumstance, I couldn't just say to like a woman, "Hey, let's talk about you at my apartment for an hour." It's just automatically creepy. Or like like I kind of know you, but like I remember, I think I ran into you at the Pits like pop up like random comedy
Yeah,
festival,
yeah.
and I was like, oh, Marco Soresi, good to meet you. You should do my show sometime. And I like had no idea who you were because I see like
It was it was also like that's when I literally when I was first like, all right, I think I'm gonna start taking stand up more seriously. I took like a real hard right turn into stand up, and that was very early on when we saw each other or when we met for the first time.
Yes, and I
So,
was like, yeah, and I think I sort of had that feeling about it's like, oh, I guess he must be newer to the city or to stand up because I've never seen him before.
Yeah.
And then next month you're headlining Caroline's. I'm like, oh, he is. The reason I don't know who he is because he's miles ahead of me.
Oh no, that was like a very unique circumstance. But it's always so weird. I remember Eric Helwig, who you know, who's in LA now, and my friend Sally Ann Hall. Like they met at something and they didn't know each other, and I was like, how do you not know each other? You both have been in this scene for years. You're both like very good comics, and it's amazing. That's how big. You know, I think she just happens to live in Brooklyn. He lived in Queens, so that just they never saw each other.
Yeah, there's like a strange kind of, I don't want to use the word tribalism, but it almost is like that. Like New York is such a huge city, and the comedy scene especially can be so big that you split it in half. You got the club comics and then the alternative comics, and then you got to split that up even more. You got to split like the Queens comics and the Brooklyn alternative comics and like the Bronx comics.
I don't know what it would be like if I lived in Brooklyn. I mean, I live in Harlem, so like there's not as much of a scene per se. There's a couple places in Harlem with shows. There's a couple mics. Whitney runs a bunch of mics in Harlem. Whitney Chanel Clark.
Is Cafe Addis still there?
I think it is. I've never been there.
I did a couple mics and some shows there. That was like when I first started venturing to Harlem because I think my first like year or so in the city.
Yeah. I mean, there's the Apollos there. If you get really lucky, go there.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'd be scared.
Oh, to do the like new talent or Showtime at the Apollo.
Yeah. I think I could pull it off, but man, it would be scary. Because if you don't get them in the first 5 seconds, the boos become too loud to hear anything. And it's over.
Yeah.
It's done.
Then you just, at that point, you just kind of bathe it in.
Did you watch Richard Pryor's son did it recently, and he got booed bad.
Oh, really?
I mean, and then he just told a joke. It wasn't very well structured. It was just loose. And they gave him like the kind of respect that they had for him bought him maybe 10 more seconds. Like that's how much it was worth, that amount of respect. And then at some point people started booing and he said like, show some respect, and it was done. And then they booed him the fuck off the stage.
Nope.
I was like, show some respect. Have you never performed in an urban room in your whole life? You don't get to yell, show some respect.
Yeah, they'll Urban Room will eat you alive for if you are that indignant.
Yeah, you have to be indignant the right way. Like you have to be like, shut the fuck. I mean, you have to like.
Yeah, there's a certain level of like condensation or like the implication that I'm better than you.
Yeah.
I think most people, not just black comedy audience, would pick up on that and retaliate.
Oh, sure.
Immediately, but it's more widely known. And in that situation in particular, the Showtime at the Apollo crowd, where the crowd is in on the fact that they're allowed to boo anyone who sucks. I've heard them boo like 6 and 8 year olds.
Oh, for sure. Oh, I went to one show once and I'm just like, oh no, this is so mean. And then like 10 minutes I'm like, boo!
Right, you kind of get into it. Well, I'm kind of the same
I'm an
way.
animal at heart.
Well, I'm kind of the same way. Like when I go to a soccer match and I'm, in my regular everyday life, I'm very chill, very kind of like, yeah, people like stuff, and it's cool if I like things that other people don't like, and they can like things that I don't. Put me in a soccer stadium, I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah. It takes. I gotta be drunk to get there. Something about like doing something with a group makes me go like, I feel weird.
It's easy to get into that mob mentality.
Yeah, but I think a couple drinks
kind of
do it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, and I want to make sure I can pronounce your name correctly. Gianmarco Soresi.
Yeah, Gianmarco Soresi.
Excellent.
Most casual.
So I'm curious, kind of get an idea of who you are. Where do you come from?
So I grew up in Potomac, Maryland, which is very near Bethesda. People know that a lot more.
Yeah, I'm from Maryland too.
Yeah, I think I saw it.
We might have had this conversation.
Where in Maryland are you from?
I'm from Calvert County. To date this a little bit, have you seen that article this week about the sign that someone put up that said, liberals, if if you get your guns, if you try to impeach President Trump, a message from the Calvert County deplorables. That's 15 minutes from my mother's house.
Oh my God.
I've
I don't remember anything. I mean, everything's more political now.
yeah,
I
but
mean,
I'm very familiar. I'm very familiar with Potomac.
Oh, cool. You ever been to like Potomac Village? Potomac Pizza?
Maybe a long time ago. I once performed at a room, a Kurt Shackelford room in Bethesda. I think at the
really?
Hyatt. Do you know Kurt?
No, I don't. But I've just been there once since my stand-up days. And I did DC Improv, The Lounge.
Yep.
And then I did a DC Underground show, which was like insane.
Yeah.
It was, and it's they call this shit open mics, these like midnight open mics on a Saturday night, and it's like 100 people going nuts, and I'm like, I'm not doing anything new here. I'm trying to impress everyone right now.
Yeah, this is a show. I'm the same way at like a booked open mic that has like a legit like pro headliner. That's kind of par for the course outside of New York, and that'll draw a good number of people, and you want to kill in that situation.
Yeah, it's just got to be tough. Like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of spaces to go up and go like, yeah, so the trains are late, and try to find a joke just talking things out. Like, it seems like I would want to do well at all those shows.
Yeah.
So that must be tough. That's what I hear sometimes from people visiting. They're like, you have open mics every day? And you're like, okay, calm down. They're not, you'll get tired of them in 3 days.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted to move to New York, is because I knew you could get up every night, and I knew it was going to be,
for sure.
I knew it'd be brutal, but I knew that just putting in the time, you get to a certain point. There's a certain level, I feel, of diminishing returns, but that's why I definitely wanted to move here. Okay, so you're from Potomac, so kind of outside of DC, because Calvert's considered a DC suburb as well.
Yeah, I mean, my parents got divorced when I was like very, very young. So my stepfather and mom lived somewhere in DC for a while, and then they moved to Potomac because Montgomery County public schools are pretty good.
Yeah.
And that was the big reason for that. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan. I mean, looking back, I can't drive, or I had like girlfriends who drove all high school.
Yeah.
And I like a city. I like to be. If I grew up in DC, I think I would have loved it. If I lived next to the metro and could go places on my own, that'd be great. But Potomac, like, beautiful outdoors, wasted on me. You know, I'm just not that kid. I was an indoors kid.
Right. Me too. I liked video games. I liked reading.
Sure.
I liked TV and like early 90s Nickelodeon. That was all I really cared about.
Yeah.
I would go out, and I had the yard. It sounds like we had similar suburban Norman Rockwell-esque kind of upbringing. But I was never the kid who like would go out with a group of friends and ride bikes until dark.
Sure. I still can't ride a bike, really. Honestly, I was too scared without training wheels. So, I mean, we would do like camping in the backyard, and we'd hook up a TV all the way from the house. And it's like, what is this then? We're just watching TV outside. That's what we've done. We did have paintball guns, and that was awesome.
Yes.
It really hurt, and they always broke. But like, there was a couple games that were legendary.
Oh yeah. That sounds. I wish I got to do stuff like that. I was in Boy Scouts really early on. So because my mom didn't want me playing football. She didn't want me to have any sort of gun because my dad had a lot of guns.
Yeah. Now I wish I had done Boy Scouts.
You know, I'm trying to think if there's something I got out of it, because
I can barely tie my shoes. I would love to know knots. I would love to know skills. I would love to have skills, because I didn't do
classic
sports.
Man skills.
Yeah, like classic man skills, and like learn them early. And I would have fought it as a kid with all my heart. I was just a lazy son of a bitch. I didn't do anything physical, and like these days, like I don't do it because I'm busy and no money. But like I want to do a ropes course, and I would love to like do some kind of fun excursions. I feel like Boy Scouts. You get that. You find friends, and I don't know. What was your experience with it?
My experience with it, like Cub Scouts, was to me more fun than actual Boy Scouts.
Cub Scouts, up to what age?
That's like I think up to like maybe 4th grade.
Okay.
Like so, I think Scouts becomes like 5th grade and to 18, and then you have to become a master if you're going to be in the Scouts as an adult. Cub Scouts, we had like fun activities and stuff. Boy Scouts, I just remember the kids I was with being really mean to me and like having nightmares in my tent and saying, "Mom, Dad, please don't make me do this anymore."
So there are a lot of sleepaway trips.
Yeah, I had a couple camping trips where, like behind like churches that, you know, like we a lot of scouts in Coward County was collecting food donations, mowing the grass at various churches, and then camping out in the woods behind said churches. And you know, we'd get cold and wet, and the tents would flood. I never really enjoyed too much of that stuff, but my best friends were in it, so that was kind of fun.
Are there any skills that you have now that you're like, oh, I'm glad I know that?
Archery.
Archery, yeah.
I did pick up on that. I can't do the classic sailing knots or any of that other stuff, but I did take to archery pretty quickly because we would have like. During the summer, we'd have like day camps. That was the more fun traditional stuff where you do wood burning and like and like run around and play like cowboys and Indians in the woods.
Sure.
And then there was the archery teacher, and I remember getting into a contest with the archery instructor and winning, getting like a bunch of bullseyes. Cool. and kind of really taking to it. I haven't done it in a really long time, but I feel like
it's fun.
Back into it.
Archery, and I did a little bit of rifle, or what was it? What kind of gun was it? It was just like
it'd probably be a 22 or a BB gun.
Yeah. And that's the only sports trophy I have is for shooting. Aim I was okay at, but archery was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely a lot of fun. That's what I really grabbed onto. But for the most part, I was like in my imagination, and I was with my action figures and my TV shows.
Sure, of course, the action figures.
So I'm curious, like, what kind of? Well, did you have any siblings growing up? You said your parents divorced early.
Yeah, so like when I was 6 months old. So my mom had 3 kids with my stepfather, former stepfather. They're divorced now. And then my dad had a child with a girlfriend who left as well. So 4 younger overall. I have the oldest, who feels like most of part of my childhood is exactly 4 years younger, born on the same day. And that was on my mom's side, Victoria. And she kind of was. It feels like we went through a similar thing together.
Yeah, and you guys are close.
Oh, the older I get, the closer I get with all my siblings. It's been one of the few joys of adult life has been kind of getting closer to all of them. Because I think we have the shared enemy of our parents. And
right.
They've been great. My sister Victoria is in DC doing kind of fashion stuff. She like gets clients and she'll pick out their whole wardrobe and whatnot. One sister, Katie, is a dancer in LA. She was here at NYU and now she's there.
Yeah.
Brutal career.
Oh yeah, brutal short career.
Brutal, yeah.
What kind of dance? Like modern ballet?
Hip hop, not ballet, but hip hop, modern. I mean, she's just had like. First, the auditions that they have you do are like 5 to 6 hours. None of it pays. I mean, you're literally like figuring out like, can my body take any more today? And
right.
So many people and just like so many close calls. She was going to be performing with Lady Gaga on Saturday Night Live. Like, she missed a final to go do it. And then Friday night, 12:35 at night, she calls me. And I pick up the phone, and she's weeping. And it's because the band was bigger than they thought. They had to cut 2 of the 4 dancers, and she got cut. And it's like...
Oh,
and that could have been... I mean, that could have been... Once you become one of these singers on, like, their dance crew, like, that's a full career.
Yes.
And I think she's doing well there. It's hard because I'm probably the only one, the closest in the family who can understand the ups and downs of the career. But even I don't know, how's it really going.
Yeah.
But I think she's like moving up. And it's just tough. It's one of those things where you're dealing. I sometimes you deal with the comedians who dropped out of college to start doing stand-up. You're like, how the fuck do I compete with this? She's competing with people who at like 3 years old, their parents decided for them, you're a dancer, and they're just insane. They've been doing this for their whole life.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like Black Swan or Fame or Center Stage, like all of those like hardcore. Again, if you like years of experience. Like,
Yeah.
what possibility do you have that you're going to match them on that level?
I love Black Swan, by the way. I still, even though I'm not a dancer, I still like watch it. I'm like, that's me. I am Black Swan.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much to relate to on that, and with the added element of the physical nature of it. And I think, what is it like, most, if you're lucky, a dance career is like maybe 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, until you get a fucking injury, and then it's done whenever your body so chooses. I mean, I'm not sure when like the point is the average cutoff is. I think my sister is 22 now, and maybe 21. I mix it up sometimes, but
Sure.
Yeah, it's a crazy ticking clock, and like you got to be developing your exit strategy, which is kind of like choreographer or what? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, similar to like, I'm thinking of like, because you have the artistic ups and downs, and then there's the athlete my body is wearing down. So I think of like pro wrestlers who, while you're struggling to become any kind of name in wrestling, where you can make a living off of it, you're also preparing for, what if I take a move wrong and I'm paralyzed? Or
Well, I used to do a show with Mick Foley, a storytelling show.
I love him.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He was super nice with his fanny pack and his like Santa Claus T-shirt in the middle of fucking March. But he was like, I mean, he was amazing, but you know, he's missing part of his ear. Like, he had those injuries and just kept going and developed a persona that lent himself to, you know, he never was like the Rock or one of these super flippy people.
I've heard him say this in interviews. Like, he's not Shawn Michaels. Like, one of his characters, Dude Love, is his outlet of wanting to be like Shawn Michaels, like that character. But his strength, not only is he very witty and entertaining on the microphone as Mankind or Cactus Jack, but his thing was these huge bumps he would take, like these like giant, like, everyone knows him getting thrown off the cage by the Undertaker.
Yeah.
But like the matches he had with The Rock, when he started to get, like, when The Rock was just becoming like champion the first couple times, he was getting thrown off the stuff, or like he got handcuffed and then hit with a steel chair in the head, like I think 15 or 11 times.
That's what I was like when
his family was in the crowd for that, and his wife and kids are crying as he's just getting whacked in the head with a chair.
And that's when I was meeting him. I was like trying to like find that fucked up kernel that made him want to do that. He just seems like really nice and really affable, and you're like, but you let yourself be hurt. There's some like masochism thing, and I was like trying to see something weird. It's crazy what he went through. The kind of stuff that happened to me and be like, I'm done with this career, that's for sure.
Right.
Oh, I'm missing 2/3 of my ear. All right, I'm retired now. When he wrestled the Undertaker, he has a tooth in his beard and he's smiling.
Yeah,
and, you're like,
and you know where that tooth came out? Came out through his nose.
Oh God, that's horrifying.
Here's what I think, and I can't speak for him, but I feel like, because so many comics I know love pro wrestling.
Sure.
I feel there's a certain kinship there, and that and I've listened to interviews with like the old ECW wrestlers, and they were doing these like hardcore, like dangerous kind of
Taz,
wrestling.
was he part of that originally?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
So like Taz or Tommy Dreamer, like those kinds of names. It comes down to the same way we like to get on stage. You like the reaction from the crowd.
Sure.
You know, the pop of like a huge laugh, or when you're crushing super hard at a comedy club and they're just, the laughter's just rolling on top of itself. Similar to when you are about to do something incredibly dangerous and you hear the crowd going, and then you do it, and you like go through the table, or you come off the rope, the top rope, and go through something, and the crowd's like, or like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I feel that there's there's a similar thing there. You start kind of chasing that reaction.
No doubt. I mean, and I was, I was into theater and into wrestling. So like, I don't know whether there's always some guys you wonder, would you have loved musical theater, but it just was too feminine of a thing when you were growing up? I mean, it's very curious because you look at wrestling sometimes and you're like, this is we're all wearing tights, we're all like exploring, like this isn't that different from the people who are into ballet. I mean, it's just like it has the illusion, I think, of like masculinity, but it's like just as like exploratory and like we're all just like being goofy and silly and
there's
and
a lot
vulnerable in a certain kind of way.
Oh, absolutely. There's like from like just like there's a certain like physical like closeness and like physical like literal. And then I think pro wrestling is theater distilled to its like purest form. Like I've heard wrestling compared to Greek drama.
Sure.
You know, theater has its roots in Greek society as entertainment, and so does wrestling. The storylines I feel are at their like absolute purest. That's the person the audience sides with. That's the person they don't like. At its basic level, obviously, there are some people I could talk to that would get into all the backstage details and like they keep trying to make this person popular, but we don't like him, so I wish they would stop trying to make him popular.
Yeah, but I could go to wrestle. I could go see a thing now, and I haven't. I'm not in tune with the
right.
plots.
If you're not in tune,
enjoy myself a lot.
Exactly, because they present to you at its very base a struggle between righteousness and immorality.
Yeah.
And the struggle of the often sometimes eventual triumph of righteousness over immorality.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I think appeals to it.
Who is your favorite?
If I had to really think, I'd probably still go back to Stone Cold Steve Austin.
He's pretty special.
When I was watching it the most, that's who was really big, and he was still really big by the time I kind of drifted out of it.
He threw me. I only went to a couple live matches, but he threw me a Mr. Sacco. He was like beating up Mankind, and he took off the sock and poured beer all over it. My dad was like, over here, and we got it. We got this. I have a Mr. Sacco back at home.
That's awesome.
That was pretty cool.
I love everything about that.
Yeah, he's a badass. He's a cool dude. I was a big Undertaker guy. I don't know why. I used to, you know how he would roll the eyes in the back of his head? When I played basketball in like 5th grade, I would do that to the other team to like try to scare them, but I did it so badly. I just was like a fucking weirdo.
Yeah, you got to keep doing it. It took me a while to be able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I was like, I don't know if this is good for my eyeballs, but yeah, I liked him. I liked him when he was. I liked the more character-y stuff. When he became just kind of like a biker dude, I was like, oh, I liked
that other thing.
I liked purple gloves, purple tie.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like the American badass him. So you said you would go to these matches with your dad. So like even after your folks divorced, your dad was still around?
Yeah, so it was a joint custody. So I went back and forth, more weekdays with my mom, more weekends with my dad. And that was forever. I mean, there was some... I don't know how... I think they probably went to court. My dad probably tried to get full custody at some point. But no, they stayed joint custody throughout.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure it can't be good. I mean they didn't get along. It was ugly. My stepfather was pretty rough growing up.
Yeah.
Weird. I think there's weird Freudian stuff that always comes into play on both ends, or just like, the first love of his wife's life is her son over him. I mean, there's just certain bonds. I think like I'm just a reminder of his wife's ex-husband. Like I look like the guy,
right?
And I'm in the house, and like they can't fuck because I had a nightmare, and I go to the room like, can I sleep in your room, Mom?
Sure.
So there was all sorts of stuff. I think just like I would bring this gigantic duffel bag with me that had all my video game systems, all my action figures.
Yeah.
So I would like try to create some kind of consistency going back and forth. It's a rough ride, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the solution is, but it's more just like they didn't get along. My stepfather was my dad's former lawyer, which could have contributed to things. My dad dated like a lot of women. He dated my kindergarten teacher, which was probably a no-no. And then my mom got that kindergarten teacher fired from the school, which is probably like, that's not necessarily your business. I think there's just a lot of like, there was a war between them.
It sounds like it. First off, they're going for people that are just close to them.
Yeah.
It sounds like. They're not like going out and meeting new people.
Yeah.
And then they're sabotaging each other's attempts of moving on, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it must be hard when you have a kid to move on fully. I think there's just like they both have a rage towards each other deep down, and they can't help it. I mean, they're interacting. You have probably alimony payment arguments over who owes people money.
Right.
So like you're constantly in touch in the worst way possible.
Yeah.
And they would let things slip like, oh, did you know your dad's a homophobe? And you're like, I'm 6. And he's like, well, once your dad said this. And it's like, why are you telling me this? I don't need to know. I don't need to know what he said once in the 90s. It was a different time. I don't need to deal with this. And then like,
Right.
your mom always does this. And yeah, I think it stuck with my dad a little longer. But he had his own custody battles with my sister on that side, and my mom testified against him. And it's kind of like, why? Why did you do that? Decades later. Like, why? And there's always different reasoning around the alimony. I mean, these court cases become brutal.
Oh,
They're brutal.
I can relate. My parents divorced later in my life, but it was still quite acrimonious. Maryland.
So
yeah.
did they have to live under separate roofs for a year?
My dad did. He actually moved back to our old house and was sleeping in my old bedroom with his best friend, who they're not best friends anymore.
Sure.
Because he was going to sell the house to him, and then he ended up not doing it, and he trashed it. It was a whole thing.
Oh God.
But like
that law is crazy. I mean, that law also says they're not allowed to have sex during that year. That's part of the law.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I do know some kind of more uncomfortable stuff about my parents' sex life that I wish I didn't.
Sure, that always comes out in the divorce.
Oh no, it does. Like, I heard only my mom's side for the longest time.
Sure.
And then I was not giving my dad any purchase. And as I get older, I learn more, and I start to say, okay, I understand why you did what you did. I still don't think you should have.
Yeah.
You should have done it differently.
Yeah.
But you start to think, well, I mean, how far until somebody breaks and does something that they are ashamed of?
Sure, of course.
You know, like how long could I have dealt with that situation?
Yeah.
And then finding all this stuff out years later, and it gives me like a lot of hang-ups about like letting people like know me or get close to me.
How old were you when they got divorced, you said?
16, I think.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. You see, I saw my sisters were older when their parents got divorced, my mom and stepdad. Yeah. And so like there's parts of me that's like, yeah, I don't know which is worse, because I grew up never with one single home, and I never had to like experience, I guess, the breaking down of that home.
Mm-hmm.
But I also never had a one home. But then on the other hand, so you were what, junior, sophomore in high school?
Yeah, junior, sophomore in high school. I might have started. Well, I remember the breaking point. The next time I do my one-man show, I'll invite you. I'm curious to, because from this conversation to like how you see it get translated to stage, I'm curious your analysis on it. I remember very clearly the inciting incident that was like, divorce is assuredly a thing that's happening. I also remember the build up towards it, and because my dad was he's retired now, but he was like a nuclear power plant shift operator, so he had a physically demanding job that was often 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and he was working 12-hour days, sometimes 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., sometimes 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Wow.
And trying to raise me and dealing with my mom, and I remember and specifically what happened when it broke, and then when he came back and the fight that happened before he actually left for good.
Sure.
And I wasn't going to hear his side of the story for years. I had no interest.
So when he moved out.
Yes.
And did you go back and forth at all, or you were just with your mom?
I stayed with my mom. I would see my dad sometimes. We'd get like breakfast or something. It was better, honestly, because I was not getting along with him at all while he was still living there. But it got better.
Sure.
Got better after he moved down. I can't say we're close now because neither of us can talk about our feelings towards the situation. Like neither of us have done that yet. But I'm also learning stuff about my mom that I didn't know, and I haven't.
And you're learning that from him or from who?
I'm learning that from my stepmom via my girlfriend. That's how I first found out.
So your dad got remarried?
Dad got remarried. My mom didn't.
She dating, or is she just like?
I don't know if she is. She's not telling me.
Sure. Did she ever?
I don't think so.
Okay.
To be honest. So kind of learning that stuff, like all this adult shit that I'm not.
And so the stepmom feels comfortable telling your girlfriend they're just chatting and.
Well, they're trying to get closer to me through her.
Okay.
I think that's the reason that, and I don't mean to make this all about me.
No, I'm fascinated.
But there's because I'm not gonna, because you know how you'll take certain advice from certain people. Like if I tried to give you advice if I gave you advice on a joke, you might consider it because I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
If someone who's not a comedian tried to give you advice on a joke, you'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
You don't do what I do. So I will listen. I'll listen to her. I'll listen to her, but I will not listen. I can't. I probably won't hear the same thing coming from my dad or my stepmom.
Got it.
Who's nothing. She's a very nice. She's a very nice lady, but there's a I compartmentalize it, and I compartmentalize him for sure.
Did your dad have any other girlfriends along the way?
Yes.
Okay.
The reason that his marriage split up, he was with that woman for a little while, and then when I had a bad breakup in college, he tried to relate to me through that. I was like, no,
oh boy,
can't do it. Think of any other way to make this point, Dad.
That's so bad. Yeah, but so you, I mean, obviously, I would guess not close with that woman.
I'm polite, and I'm always and it's always nice to see her.
What about the first the
Nope, never met her.
Never met her.
Never met her. Well, she doesn't live in the country.
Okay.
She lives somewhere else.
Fantastic.
I would tell you the whole story, but I want reasons for you to come to the show.
Yeah. But I think I think for me, probably more than the divorce, it was that my dad, he almost got remarried. I mean, like they had like a wedding ceremony. I don't know why, because she was pregnant, and I considered her my stepmom, and so like there were like 6 or 7 significant women in my life who then just like disappeared out of my life when they broke up, and I think that was probably the most damaging thing. Like my kindergarten teacher, like I loved her and I loved that relationship.
Yeah, because when you're younger, you love your teacher.
Yeah,
most of the time.
And then they break up, and like they have to have this like shitty conversation with the kid where it's the same version of it's not you, it's your dad. It's like and I think that's a crazy element of. I think it's really hard to date with kids at all. I don't think my dad was necessarily like super willy-nilly about it, but he had 5-year relationships, 4-year relationships. You have to introduce him at some point. And then what can a kid do but grow attached to this like magical woman who is like a mother figure but doesn't have to be strict with you because she's not worried about you the same way your mom is, who's annoying and nagging, but you're her son, she's worried.
Yeah, absolutely.
Divorce, man, it's a trip.
So you're dealing with this. Your sisters are in the house. So what are you in chaos? Are you clinging? What's keeping you sane during all this?
I mean, I think I was a stay-at-home kid, a lot of video games. I was really into manga. I for some reason didn't get into US comics. It just wasn't at my school.
I'm recently getting into manga, so we're gonna have to do another episode probably.
Yeah, that's cool. So I was like into that, video games, indoor. I had like one best friend in middle school. I was good in school, and I think I'm still like processing these things in therapy because I never like lost it. I mean, like I have anger issues, but I never like went off the deep end at any point. And I think I just learned to control everything within myself. And I would go to my room, and my dad's house was originally before my dad had a kid, like that was the house to be at. He was fun as fuck. We would always party. We would just
order whatever you want to
order
eat.
whatever we want to eat. I mean, he would let me do anything. I like took karate. Then one day I'm like, I'm too tired. I don't want to go. Okay, son, you quit. I'd be swimming team, and then like the pool's too cold. Okay, son, let's get the fuck out of here. And it was like amazing at the time. Looking back, I'm like, wow, I wish I'd stuck with anything. Nice to have some of those skills.
Right. Well, you could put it all on an acting resume.
Yeah.
I literally my acting resume is anything I ever kind of did.
Sure.
But the stuff I'm really good at is first.
I can put my yellow belt in Taekwondo when I was 6. But yeah, and then like my stepfather was strict as fuck. My mom was working for a while, and so we had kind of a live-in babysitter. So like I was all about going to my dad's. And then when my dad had another kid, I think a lot of things happened. That kid's mom left, and there were like intensive custody battles. And I think what happened with that one was he did not have custody of her. She's older than 8, or she's 18 now, so all that's moot. But and when I think they had joint custody, he tried to get more than he lost it all, which is a risk. And when you don't have any custody, you're so terrified that if your daughter or son goes, I don't want to go to daddy's anymore, that they can pull it. I mean, the person with full custody can go, okay, you don't have to. So you just end up like getting into this war of who can spoil this kid the most. And any moment they're unhappy, you freak the fuck out. And I think that just kind of made me immediately very secondary in the house to this little girl's needs. This 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old's needs became kind of the primary thing. And I was originally the very much the center of attention. So it was just a severe decline. For some reason, when I was a kid, my dad promised me, for no reason, that he'd never have another kid. And like, so when he told me that he, knocked up his girlfriend, like I took it as a deep betrayal. And my mom was like, why the fuck did he ever promise that to you? I never even asked him. He's just like, don't worry, son, I'll never have another kid.
Yeah, it's such an odd thing to say. I remember at one point, before my parents got divorced, my dad randomly asking me to rank him as a father, and I
like
think,
a cup world's number 7 dad,
like a scale of 1 to 10. I remember saying a low number, and he wouldn't let it go for like a while.
Oh God, what did you say?
I think I said like 4 or 5 because he had like yelled at me like earlier in the week or something.
How old were you at the time?
I'm not that old. I was like maybe 10 or 11.
That is so much to unpack. Like he went to his 10-year-old and asked for a rating, and why? What did he feel that day that made him ask that?
Right. And I was probably not thinking about it at all, because we used to go to Perkins, and we'd eat, and then we'd go to the Marine Museum and look at like fish and the megalodon skeleton you see on Shark Week. That's in my hometown. I would have never thought to even. It was literally something I'd never thought.
And did you mean it as like you're mediocre, or was it just like, I guess
I probably said it because I was upset about one thing.
Sure.
So
you said it with a little like, take that.
Well, I think maybe a little bit of confusion.
Sure, it is a confusing thing to be asked.
And then, so were you just like, so when you're dealing with this, so are you just sort of like, so because I feel if either of my parents had ever had another kid, I would have reacted similarly. And just kind of. So are you like just kind of retreating?
I think to a certain extent. I mean, it was more
like
just
escapism, sort of.
Yeah, I think it was just like not fun anymore, and it was very jarring. I think my balance in my life came from my mom and stepdad's side sucks, and it's also like I'm there during the weekdays, so it's part of school.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the part you have to do, and then fun on the weekends. And when I lost that kind of haven at my dad's house, I think I didn't want to hang out with him and my 3-year-old sister. Like, he was very intent on like, we're all going to hang out together. And I'm like, I don't want to hang out with a 3-year-old, you fucking maniac. And I'm sure, I think like, again, it's like stuff I'm still figuring out that changed, because my dad I was one of those, my dad was my best friend to the detriment of probably like making regular friends. Like a Friday night and Saturday night just being with my dad was great.
Uh-huh.
And I had maybe one other really good male friend. And then when that was gone, I think I just like, you become lonely in a certain way, and that's when I probably retreated into video games and anime and just late night cup of noodles and Cowboy Bebop and shit.
I can relate to that so hard. For me, I didn't get into anime until later. It was maybe Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon at the time.
Of course, Dragon Ball Z.
But yeah, and for me, I don't know if the geography of Potomac's somewhere, but I couldn't walk to my friend's house. I needed a ride.
Exactly.
So that led to the isolation as well. And again, when I lost my friend, my dad is my friend. Yeah, really isolating kind of experience. And I just sort of, I remember playing Metal Gear Solid.
Oh my god.
On PlayStation through several times.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I remember at least one or two couple times having major freakouts about the finality of life on Earth. Towards the end. I don't know if you've ever played that game in its entirety, but it deals with a lot of that kind of stuff towards the end.
Sure.
And oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember what else. And like really retreating into like reading about the Titanic was another thing I got really into. I would go into these
what a metaphor.
I'd go into these deep wormholes of like I'm going to pick 4 or 5 things and learn everything about it.
Yeah.
And this is going to keep me from thinking about if I'm sad or like about the fact that my friends are changing, but I'm not changing.
Sure. Any therapy along the way?
I didn't get into therapy until I was in like my mid 20s.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing any of this. I was just sort of like in my room by myself playing video games and jerking off to
of course.
temporarily satiate the dread.
I had like 2 therapists growing up. I think they were just both happened to be bad. I mean, it's just one of these, it's the luck of a draw thing. You know, the right therapist could have. I think something happened in 2nd grade. I don't remember this, but my grades must have dipped or something.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe like I did bad on one test and everyone overreacted. I'm not sure. So long. But like they got me with a therapist who like, she always like ate during the sessions. Something about it grossed me out. And so I would just play with my action figures and she'd be like, oh, is your mom the Green Ranger? And I was like, no, bitch, I'm just playing with my action figures. Leave me alone.
Right.
And I had one later, but it's too bad. It's too bad I couldn't have gone with a great therapist because that could have been very useful.
Mm-hmm. Well, my big problem with therapists is I go because I'm trying to get answers, or I'm like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I reacting to this? Why am I still hung up on this?
Sure.
What's the thing I have to do to let go? And I tend to get the therapists that want me to figure it out, and I'm like, I'm paying, to quote Christopher Titus, I'm paying $100 an hour. I kind of want to know what the fuck you think.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I never had it when I had therapy when I was younger. Maybe I would have benefited from it. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm getting more out of this conversation.
No. I mean,
all the time I
wish
to
I
therapy.
had. I mean, there's just like times, but I remember like in college I had like a deep classical existential crisis that I think mixed in with minor OCD to just like crippling effect. And I remember like that's when I went to therapy, kind of like, I want you to tell me what happens when we die. And it's kind of like, that's not what therapy is. We're just going to talk about what you're feeling right now. And like, you know, I so wanted a resolution to my feelings and for someone to convince me of something. And that's when it was really hard. Now I have that therapist now who I think I just lucked out and got a great therapist. But, you know, I definitely get used to this. You know, we're just going to talk about things, and it's very rare I'm going to walk away going like, aha.
Yeah. I wonder if that's the business model. Like if he has a breakthrough, then that's an income stream.
No, I mean, my therapist does not make enough money for. I did something where like she was getting, you know, another degree, and I was paying $30 for 2 hour 15-minute sessions every week, and I pay $45 for an hour 15 a week. So there's no way. It is, I guess, a comfort of being like, she's definitely. She's sticking with me because we have a history, and maybe one day I'll be able to pay what she's actually worth. But
right.
It's not a money grab. I don't think for her. It's not enough.
That's good.
That sounds like someone who's in it because they're trying to help people.
But it's tough. You watch Chris Gethard's special?
I saw it
Career
live. It was
Suicide?
it was great.
But it's also, when I'm watching, I was like, if you had jumped off that cliff, that therapist should be in jail. There's some comedians that talk about their therapist where I'm like, that sounds like a fucking disaster. I don't think that's necessary. Nikki Glazer talks about like this abusive therapist she has that she's like, I love her. And I'm like,
Yeah, I
this
don't like
sounds
that.
like a fucking monster. Chris Gethard said, I want to write a book with you or a show with you. And like, I'm glad it all worked out. I'm glad he's alive. I'm glad he got a great show. But I remember hearing it and being like, this is really troubling. Not everyone who goes to therapy just happens to have the drive, ambition, and community that results in a show. Who knows who like went to her needing help and she talked about astrology and then they hung themselves. I don't know.
No, I know. I just remembered that Nikki Glazer bit because there's this sort of element of tough love. You know, like
Yeah.
that's some people's approach, and that's like dads of a certain generation. That's definitely, I feel, their approach because that's how they were raised.
Sure.
But that just doesn't work for some people. If you come at and I definitely feel this way. If you come at someone that I'm like this, if you come at someone super hard, you'll never get in again.
Yeah. And maybe, for all I know, like that's, if Nikki, who am I to say if someone says they like their therapist who to me seems insane, who am I to say that's not what you need? I guess for me, it's more like I have friends who are in trouble and I want to recommend therapy.
And you want to
but
help
I know so brutally that therapy is like a hope you get a good one.
Uh-huh. It's a real
like,
roll of the dice.
It's a huge roll of the dice.
It's an expensive roll of
The place that I went when she was still getting her degree, there was an Orthodox Jewish therapist with the tassels and the whatnot, and I'm like, if I got him, I couldn't, because I'd go like, I think you need therapy. Luckily, it was a miracle.
Yeah.
I feel like I just lucked out.
Yeah, and you're concerned about other people. That's I think that's
Yeah.
I'm picking up on that because I know at your core you're a good guy, and
I hope
that's
so.
a
I mean,
confirmation of
I
that.
don't know. I don't know any, but I certainly have friends. I think therapy is just such a great thing. It's just like, yeah, I think what would Trump be like if he had therapy? Probably no different. But like, I know so many people where I'm like, but also I think I was very reluctant to it because both my parents have therapy, and I'm like, I think your therapist must suck. Or without them, my parents would be even more insane. Who knows?
That you should say that on stage.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I like that. This is I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm growing as a person in this conversation.
Oh,
I'm getting
good.
a lot out of
Oh,
this. I
glad.
don't know. I'm gonna have the same problems after you leave, but I'll at least feel better about it.
Yeah. That's all we
So-
can do.
So okay. So you're wrestling with all this stuff. Where we're into manga. Where did you go to college?
Yeah, so I went to first for DC. I went to Georgetown Day School, and that's where I kind of really found a theater world. I felt like I was
'Cause
the high school theater star of the school,
You were the star of the school,
at least in my
Okay.
grade. I had some
So were you
people-
like you were like the leads in stuff?
Yeah. There was some competition, but I would say like I was number one ish, or at least number one man.
What shows did you do?
Little Shop of Horrors, the Seymour junior year was my highlight. We did On the Town, and I was Gaby, the sailor in that. We did Arabian Nights, and I played an Arabian, and it was probably very bad, but it was a different time.
It would be problematic today.
It would be extreme. We did Pacific Overtures.
I don't
which
know that
is
one.
it's Japan. It's Stephen Sondheim's about Japan, kind of
White kids
going
playing
from
Japanese
isolation.
people.
Yep.
Ooh, there's so much to unpack there.
But I look back on it, and I mean, it's like a musical that is so sophisticated, and to do it at a high school is, if you're able to put aside the race element of it, it was
Yeah.
incredible. We had an incredible named Laura Rosberg, who just like did ambitious shows for high school. We did Metamorphosis, where there was a pool on stage.
Yeah.
So like she was a wonderful. I wish the school had like played more with the competitions around the nation because I think that would have helped me get into better colleges. But it was incredible, and I think she treated me really well, and she saw that I was ambitious and would work hard.
Yeah.
And I admire her for that. The one thing that happened, it was a tradition during strike. When a show would close, we'd always take it down that night. It was tradition. Everyone would get drunk and high. And I wasn't a very crazy kid, but I joined in the tradition. And the first time I did sophomore year, someone pulled the fire alarm. Months later, we all got in trouble. Like 100 kids at this private school.
Yeah.
We got put on probation. They put 40 kids in my grade on probation because at the time, you didn't have to tell colleges about probation.
Right.
And they didn't want 40 kids out of a grade of 120 to like lose college chances. My year though was the first year you had to start telling colleges about probation. So I had to write every college. I mean, I was like a very good kid. There are people who sold pot at my school. People do partying all the time. That was not me. And I had to then write every college being like, I drank on campus. And who knows what that affected. But I went to University of Miami for musical theater. I got to North Carolina School of the Arts. Should have gone there, but I loved musical theater.
My girlfriend went to, I believe North Carolina was one of her options as well. She ended up going to NYU for technical theater.
Oh, cool. Like I didn't get to NYU, and it's one of these things where it's like, did that have anything to do with this letter? I mean, I'm surprised I would get to North Carolina School of the Arts and not NYU comparatively. And like I look back and I'm like, I should have taken a gap year, tried NYU again. So I have pretty rough feelings about just the investment of that college. It cost so much money. I don't think it prepared me at all or set me up professionally at all.
That's as far as connections and like
that's what North Carolina
work
does. North Carolina, it's like you come out of there. Some of the kids come out of there with crazy representation, and they start. And instead, I went there. I joined an acting company in Philly, which was an artistically probably a great decision. It was a teacher who was
So you get out of college and you move to Philadelphia to join this.
With a girlfriend I've been dating for like 3 years in college, who was an incredible actor, and in this acting company, this teacher was like incredible, but she was fucking a mess organizational wise. We were all supposed to go to Australia at the end of this like 8-month residency. It collapsed. We did shows in Philly for like one people. The kind of shows that the way we do with the comedy shows sometimes here where you wait, we're in wardrobe, intensive wardrobe, and then no one comes and it's like you got to call it after 10 minutes.
Yeah. Or you start doing that like, oh, we'll start 15 minutes after this.
My dad came and saw it and he was the only one in the audience and I felt like, oh my God, this is so fucking humiliating.
Yeah, that's why I've never had that experience doing a play, but that would really sour me on plays. Like the couple of acting gigs I had out after college, like luckily there was always like a little bit of a base there, or I was like doing kids theater, which is very different kind of thing. But there was always like a group there, and the kids are just always enthusiastic.
Looking back on it, the fact that this teacher had lived there for years and like couldn't get these shows filled at all is like, now I realize it's like, whoa, how the fuck did that happen? Even I can get people to the pit attic once in a while if I have to.
Yeah, I could get 10 people on a night if I really needed it. Or or even like my monthly, like for the 2 years I was doing it at the Creek, I never canceled a show.
Yeah, for sure.
I always had somebody or enough, but yeah. And then when you start doing your own stuff, it gives you a whole other level. For me, at least, give me a whole other respect for like promoters and like like I'm not mad at any comedy club owner for not like seeking me out or like giving me a check spot, because you in like if the market is so like demanding of grabbing people's attention in so many other different ways.
Yeah,
the fact that anyone comes, first off, I'm amazed anyone comes to comedy at all.
Sure.
Because when I and this might get me, like I never sought out comedy clubs as a form of entertainment before I was doing before I started doing stand up.
Yeah.
I would go and see my favorite comedian that I knew from albums or YouTube or TV.
Yeah, you're right. To go to just a night of comedy.
To just like this, this club's to just like, I know this club always has great lineups. I know that I'll probably like the majority of the comics I see. That's not something I was doing. And granted, I was in Baltimore and there were not those kinds of nights. It's like a weekend Friday through Sunday club, but I was not going to, I wasn't going to like, here's like a list of comics you're going to see.
Sure.
Kind of shows.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense.
So how did you end up getting to New York? I know we're kind of jumping around a bit, but how do you... So do you go from Philly to New York?
Yeah, I went pretty straight. I think I always knew I wanted to go to New York. I came up here a lot with my dad, and particularly like my dad, he did like oil cleanup in the 90s and made a killer. I mean, was very wealthy.
Yeah.
And he retired in his 40s, and this lent to me just having so much fun at his house. And we'd come up and like he would get me like a private tour of FAO Schwartz. And like I'd pick out what 10 Christmas presents I wanted. Like insane. We stay at the Plaza or the Four Seasons or the Waldorf, see Broadway shows front row. It was amazing. So based off that, I was like, I'm gonna come to New York. New York's the best.
Right.
But I think like I didn't drive, so that's a big thing. But I think I always like thought New York was
the
goal. Yeah, for sure. And I was gonna do theater and then hopefully get some TV film stuff. Like that was just the general route. That was the mood I was in. So I went straight from Philly to New York, and
what year was this?
This was 2012.
2012. Okay,
and it was very sudden because we were all supposed to go to Australia with this acting company. I bought a ticket, and then she just kind of shut it all down. The girlfriend and I were gonna break up. I was always of a mindset. I think this came from divorce stuff, where I was like, after college we should break up because like we should grow as people individually. I don't know where this is going. I wasn't going to get married young. That's for sure. And then we did the acting company together, and then we were going to go to Australia, and that was going to be kind of the honeymoon, and we'd see from there. But instead, Australia's gone. She's going to move to LA now, but she's going to come to New York for a month, but then that becomes way too financially burdensome, so now she's going to be there for 7 days. So then this like intense relationship all of a sudden went from a 2-month, like we haven't even thought about the fact that we're going to break up, at least according to this imaginary plan, to 7 days. And it was rocky and rough. And I had like one manager who wanted to meet me once I moved to New York. And of course that didn't result in anything at all. So I was like, oh no, what do I do? I had nothing. I just started with nothing.
Yeah. So you get to New York, you want to act, all these plans fall through.
Yeah.
And how do you pull yourself out of that?
I mean, are you blessed
desperate?
with money. My parents were giving me money, so money was not a problem, and I poured money into one-on-one workshops with casting directors and agents, and just submitting for like little film things here and there. So for a while, I just like that's what got me by, and I think to the problem with the acting company is like. That was where I spent those years where I let myself be treated like shit. I get there early to fucking paint the set and do the things. So rather than when you come to New York, I think it's tough, especially in the theater world. You see kind of kids out of NYU, and you're like, they have a whole fucking network of people that they grew up with, and they're working together, and they don't need me.
Oh yeah, my girlfriend went to NYU. The people she knows,
crazy.
The people she used to work with. I'll tell you off the air, but it's mind-boggling. And to me, I'm just this like kid from the country who wanted to move to the big city, and because that's where he could do comedy. Otherwise, I was going to keep doing the same bar and grill open mic once a week, and maybe occasionally do new talent night at the comedy club.
Yeah.
Or get a guest set because Nikki Coachella likes me.
Yeah. And so it's like, rather what I should have done was like go to UCB immediately. If I could go back in time, of course. Like I wouldn't even moved into my apartment. I would have just signed up for UCB first and foremost and just bury myself in a community. Because if you don't have a college that creates your community, you got to get into a community somehow.
Yeah.
And like instead of that, I looked at these casting director workshops, and it just seemed like oh, if I have this crazy financial resource, I can kind of cheat the system, get these bigger credits, and everything else comes together. And of course, it's just like I have a couple TV credits, but they didn't build in any way. And I got an agent, but it didn't do any. I didn't get an audition. I mean, I remember when I first got an agent and like then didn't get an audition for them for 6 months, and then that audition was for like some tiny off Broadway musical in Brooklyn that no one would come see. I was shocked. I was shocked. I thought you got an agent, then you start getting auditions, and you start a career. And so I came to the communities late.
So did those come out of those workshops? Because I'm always been skeptical of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more like you have to understand that it's a scam and then play the scam the best way you know how, because to get into TV, film, commercial, it's real tough. I think it can work, but you have to kind of look at yourself and decide, like, what am I viable in right now in the marketplace? Commercially, I lucked out. I got some crazy non-union commercials that made up for it financially, and then ultimately got these General Electric commercials that, looking back, it made up for all the money I spent, fivefold. But that was crazy lucky. I mean, it was also a crazy lucky circumstance. So then I joined like the Flea Theater, but I was past, the Flea?
Yeah, I know the Flea.
Yeah, they say, well, you got to come 3 hours every fucking week to move paint cans. And I was like, I already did this. I was too old for the Flea. I was just like, no, I won't do that. And they were like, but you have to. And I was like, no, I don't.
And be like, I'll go do this somewhere else. I'm the same way. I can't work the door clubs anymore.
Yeah.
I did it. I almost got beat up by Rich Voss's heckler.
Really?
Yeah, that's
what club did you work?
The Laughing Devil.
Oh, okay.
I used to work the door there.
Wow.
For like a year or so. Fun. Met a lot of cool comedians.
Sure.
I ran a show there for a little while, but it didn't. Same way. I thought that I would be working the door would make me a paid regular at that club, and that did not happen.
So I just did these things. I ended up kind of the big culmination. I did like a web series with some money and just randomly met a producer, and I thought it was great. But then as you find out, getting press for a web series is fucking impossible.
It's a nightmare. The web series I did with Kevin Frolix, which is still on YouTube, his idea was we were going to do it, and it wouldn't get really big, but people would discover it organically, and that happened. It's on a small scale, and that's ultimately. I'm so sorry to cut you off. Maybe you've reached a similar conclusion lately. I'm on the Chris Gethard model of keep shouting till they're listening. From the theme song of the show.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, Chris Gethard, at least the little, I know, he kept, at first, like, doing that one thing again and again with that show. And he had a crazy community, though. Like, he might have had a lot of hard knocks, but he also is best friends with fucking
Seth Meyers.
That's huge.
Yeah. And
Will Ferrell just didn't, happen to turn on the TV and Chris Gethard was on. Like, that's a lot of things that led to that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, great for him, but I don't know. It's so hard. I did the web series. I did this Fringe Festival play that, like, by a miracle is going to be off Broadway this summer at 59's 59. And then I know
59's 59.
Yeah. And then the General Electric commercials, I got this, like, crazy influx of money I'd never known what to do with. And I filmed a sketch series, and, like, it eventually got us to do a video for Funny or Die, and it's a great calling card. But at the end of the day, it didn't take off. So what I like about stand-up, and this has been like the last year and a half, I kind of took a hard right turn. My friend saw it. My play has a lot of like pseudo stand-up storytelling stand-up in it. And my friend saw it and was like, you got to do this more. And I think...
Had you been doing a lot of stand-up before that?
So my trajectory with that, in college, I took the class at Caroline's on Broadway here.
Yeah.
So I did 5 minutes there. I was good in the class. I went back to college, and then I just like wrote an hour and performed an hour for like my conservatory. And it went great. In Philly, I was focused on acting, but I did it here and there. Nothing serious in Philly, though.
Yeah.
A Helium open mic.
Sure.
And then I moved to the city. Linda Smith, who taught me at Caroline's, who has been kind of a friend all the way back. I took her class 2010, I think. She would like put me up at Caroline's once every 2 months on the Monday nights. And I think it's one of those things where the audiences were packed and I was doing more storytelling really, but like I was affable enough that it went well. And I thought like, well, I'm good at this. But then I went to maybe one Creek open mic and one Laughing Buddha, one like 11 p.m. Creek open mic, one Laughing Buddha at 11. And I was like,
Yeah.
fuck this. And, my storytelling jokes like bombed there, but I had done so well at Caroline's with them that, the way you do where you're like, oh, well, clearly I just work with a bigger crowd. Like when I have a big crowd, like that's how I ride that wave.
Yeah,
and you make all these. It's very hard, I think, at the beginning to really, especially with that kind of switch, like measure what's going on. And also some mics, if you're last in the bucket at 11 p.m. Creek mic, good luck knowing your worth.
Yeah, no way you're going to succeed there. It's just the nature of the environment. Yeah,
and I wasn't a late night guy, so like it all just felt very anathema to my whole existence.
Yeah.
And then my friend saw me in this play and was like, she cried at the end of the play. She took me out to like a dinner and was like, you should do more of that. And some guy was offering me, like, if I could get a nonprofit attached, he'd give me $5,000 for any kind of project. And I was like, let's film an hour special. And then I just dove in deep and fast. And looking back on the special, there's so much that I'm like, oh, this is more storytelling again.
Yeah.
But then, like,
that's not a bad thing. That's a valid format, I think.
It's definitely valid, but like, it's knowing kind of which is which. I would go to mics and still bomb and be confused. And then, so it's truly been the last year and a half. Whenever people ask, like, when did you start stand-up? I don't really feel like I have an accurate answer.
Yeah.
But like, it's only been like a year and a half of like, that's when people ask, what am I? I say I'm a stand-up comic. And acting used to be, I never would have fathomed a day that acting that I wasn't an actor first and foremost in my heart and my soul. But I think emotionally, like the desire to do my own stuff, or like the shortcomings I had in dramatic acting where I just felt like, I don't think I'm ready to go here as a person every day. I don't know if I want to do a Death of a Salesman every day. I don't know if I feel that. I would muscle the fuck out of it and work so hard to get there. Yeah. But stand-up felt like the thing of, oh yeah, I could do this even when I don't want to.
I know exactly what you mean. Like, because there's an instant gratification element to it.
Sure.
There's a fun element to it. Because again, at the end of the day, the idea is playful and joke-like. But I don't think you got to beat yourself up about like how long you've identified as a stand-up comedy, because everything that has informed you getting to that point informs your ability as a performer, and that stand-up is just another part of that form.
And I believe that, but there's that part where I'm like, oh, I wish when I was 6 years old I started the stand-up scene. I'd be fucking on Netflix by now.
I have a sincere belief on this, that I think you've got to, even if you start stand-up super early, you don't get good until you've had a life and had some experiences and have some stuff to talk about. I think starting early helps implement the craft in the form of jokes and learning that, but you get really interesting once you've been knocked around a bit, and you've in the movie 300, you're that guy who loses an eye, and you've got some stuff to tell, like, I'm going to tell you about Leonidas and all of this stuff.
Sure.
So I don't think you got to beat yourself up about that.
Yeah, I'll try.
I had another point I was gonna try to make, but it was complimentary. Don't worry.
Oh, good.
Because I definitely I got to work with you on some stuff, because you're a guy like one of these other people, like the Cinderblock ladies. Like, I like being around people that get stuff done, because it's inspiring to me.
Sure.
I would love to. And before we close this out, this has been a great conversation.
Thank you.
I think my battery is just about to run out.
Oh, I see.
So maybe right before we go, let's talk about anime until the battery runs out for at least 4 minutes, because I've been getting into it the last couple of years, and the stuff I've attached to, I fucking love.
Yeah. What are your things?
My favorite TV series is a show called Sword Art Online. I don't know if you've ever heard about that.
I don't think I've heard of it.
It's about a virtual reality video game that you dive into fully so that your real body becomes inert, but you're living in the game. And the creator traps everyone inside. And if you die in the game, you die in real life.
Sure.
I really like that. I really like that show. My favorite film that I've seen in the last 2 years is an anime called Your Name, directed by a guy named Makoto Shinkai. I
haven't seen that. I'll have to see it. It's been a while. I've been out of it for a while, but
Your Name is one of the most beautiful movies I've seen in a long time. Like, nothing has hit me in the heart so deeply than this movie.
I got to get back. I luckily I do audition sometimes. I've yet to book one for dubbing stuff. Like I auditioned for Yu-Gi-Oh!
I really want to get into that. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, it's I mean there's a lot of different studios that do it, and there's a lot of like non-union studios. It's hard because I mean when you're doing it, you have to be a great reader, like because you have to be looking at the screen at the same time and matching it.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. I mean, there's so much that they're dubbing out there. Yu-Gi-Oh's here, Pokemon's here. Just every anime movie, they do a lot of stuff here. None of it pays tremendously, but it's enough. I mean, the $75 an hour to $200 an hour.
Yeah,
and
I don't need it to pay enough because I feel like that community. If you're known as someone who does a lot of the dubs, the fans of those shows love you.
Yeah. And I meet I met the guy who cast Yu-Gi-Oh! Did Pegasus, I think his name was. He was like the bad guy for the first season, and I'm just like, I watched you as a kid. I'd like listen to your voice as a kid for hours. It's so cool.
That's awesome. So Yu-Gi-Oh was a big one for you?
Yeah. I mean, like Dragon Ball was like the start, and then the manga, like GTO was a manga I loved. Rurouni Kenshin, Shonen Jump. I was there when it first started here. So One Piece, and then like the old Yu-Gi-Oh manga. It was always like there was like the anime on Cartoon Network, and then you found out like the uncensored. So like I got
all the stuff that they changed because it would be like too risque.
So like I watched Dragon Ball before Dragon Ball was here in the States. Really, I watched Dragon Ball GT. I watched everything in Japanese with American subtitles. And like I used to, it's so nerdy. I would like write down how many times they said fuck. Like I would count on like a piece of paper because I was just so enamored that like this is the real thing. And there's blood, and Bulma keeps showing her boobs to everyone.
Right.
And I mean, I love Dragon Ball. Have you been watching the new one?
Super. No, I'm watching the old Dragon Ball Z, and then I'm going to start Super.
I don't know if it's good. I mean, I skipped towards the end, and like it was fucking nuts. Like the characters who were working together, all of a sudden, I was like, what is going on? This is a betrayal of everything.
So you got to go back and be like, you have to.
Maybe I think ultimately there's no way it's going to recapture. I think the end of the day, the greatest moment of my life was the greatest dramatic moment was Krillin dying, Goku going Super Saiyan, and that battle. I feel like that's the peak experience for me. No matter what, Yu Yu Hakusho, I love. I don't ever watch that.
I know it. It's on my queue in Crunchyroll. I just started Hunter x Hunter.
Okay,
I really like that show, and you might want to check this out. It's only 12 episodes, so it's a quick binge.
Sure.
It's called Erased. It's almost kind of a noir time travel almost. This guy keeps having these experiences where he sees something tragic happen in the future, and then he gets sent back in time to stop it. And his mother gets murdered, and he gets sent back to being an elementary school student and to relive his life to change all the events that led up to his mother being murdered.
Oh God, I'll check it out.
It's only 12 episodes long. It's great. And it's on Crunchyroll. I think you can get a membership for like $6 a month.
Oh, and that's when you skip the commercials.
Yeah, you skip the commercials.
Okay. I've only watched it without, and I'm like, oh my God, these commercials are killing me.
Yeah, Crunchyroll Premium is, and I'm not sponsored by them, but yet
Crunchyroll.
But it's a worthwhile investment if you want to start getting back into anime.
Cool, I'll check it out.
Dude, John, this has been awesome. I feel like we're going to have to do another.
Yeah, I would love
another one.
This
sometime.
is fantastic.
This has been great. Thank you so much, man.
My pleasure, man.
conversation, and I thank Gian for coming over and being open when I talked about my life and being open with his life, and for the advice he shared. And we'll talk more. I think the next episode we do will be a little bit more lighter in tone, but I'm glad that we connected on some of that stuff. Guys, if you enjoyed the show, feel free to rate and subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher. Feel free to tell a friend about the show. If you guys enjoyed the show much that you want to tell a friend about it, that means the world to me, and I would appreciate you guys eternally. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope to do a live version of the podcast someday. If you guys would be interested in that, hit me up on Twitter at ComicWillCarey, or through my website, willcareyisfunny.com. And I will see you guys next week between awesome and disaster. Take care, everybody.